Hi, I'm Calum Nicholas. I'm a member of a Formula One pit crew, and this is F1 Unpacked. How much can you tell if a pit stop is fast or slower? Do you feel the difference? When you feel a pit stop is quick, it's very much of you understand the rhythm has gone quickly. Like, before we turn around and go back in the garage and look at the time on the screen, you can tell straight away if it's a fast stop. The rhythm is right. You know that the sounds of the wheel guns are happening as and when they should. And then obviously the car driving away, it's very much a sort of rhythmic thing. I often describe pit stops as a bit of a dance. It's very much sort of rhythm orientated, and you can feel it when it's not right. What do you do if you need the bathroom during the race? It kind of depends on the situation. If you know you're in a race where you've just done both cars' pit stops, then you might think that you've got time to run to the toilet. I tend to just hold on. I don't really like to take the risk. The idea of getting a call on your radio telling you that there's 15 seconds until the car's in the box and you being in the toilet it's a horrible thought. So I tend to just hold on, to be honest. What's the fastest plausible pit stop if everything was perfect? If everything is perfect, driver reaction time, everybody manages to do what they can do in exactly the right time, I believe somewhere in the 1.7 times is possible. It's obviously something that we've been chasing for a long time. So yeah, I believe it's possible. I think you can do a stop faster than 1.8, but it takes everything to come together all at once. How do you mentally cope every time you know the car is pitting? How do you push down the stress? The first answer to that is more than anything experience. I know that my first ever pit stop, my hands were shaking before it, and my hands were shaking a long time after it. It takes a long time to just sort of be able to understand that you know the skill, you've practiced the skill 100 times, and that as long as you focus on what you've practiced, it's going to be okay. You have to sort of try and put everything else out of your mind. You narrow your focus to solely your job. You try not to think about anything else that's going on around you, and you just practice the skill that you've practiced over and over and over. Who is the most important member of the pit crew? You know what, this is a really difficult question, just because without one person, the whole thing doesn't work. It's sort of impossible to say somebody's more important than others, because quite simply, you can only do your job. For us to do a fast pit stop, everybody has to do their bit. Everybody's equally important. How do you feel when your work helps win or lose a race? If something you've done causes you to not win a race, it's obviously hard to take. There's been plenty of times where you just have to take one on the chin because something's not gone right. But certainly on the winning days, knowing that the small bit that you've contributed has led to the win or to the success over the season, it makes you hugely proud. I've always been very proud of our achievements. Are some tracks more physically demanding for the pit crew than others? The biggest influence is actually pit lane layout. So the places where it's really tight, so Monaco, Zandvoort's another one, even places like Brazil where the pit lane can be really tight, it obviously just adds another element for you to think about. When you're running out to do a pit stop, you have to be aware of any cars that are driving down the pit lane. Nobody wants to get run over. But also, you know that the car might come in at a bit of an odd angle, or the car might not be perfectly positioned because the driver has had to drive around something. The tight pit lanes certainly make it more difficult. What goes through your head as the car comes up to the box? In terms of me focusing and getting ready, I have this little mantra in my head. So it's a little 6-word mantra. I say to myself, as the car's approaching to myself, I say, see the nut, hit the nut, see the nut, hit the nut. And that's sort of the only thing that I try and have in my head. I try not to think about anything else. Obviously, we've got so much going on. You've obviously got what's going on in the race itself, but then all the other work we do throughout the week and the week that's coming up to prepare for the next event. So the hardest thing is to sort of just put that out of your mind. So my little mantra, once I go out into the pit lane and I've got that mantra and I'm there and I'm on my knees and the car's coming towards me, that sort of little mantra, see the nut, hit the nut, see the nut, hit the nut, that's what sort of helps me only focus on that one job. How do you keep up physically and mentally with the endless travel, jet lag and high pace environment? I guess the first answer to that is having the people around you to support you. Throughout the season, you're going to have days where you're struggling a little bit with it, and knowing that your colleagues are there to sort of pick you up when you need it and whatever. And then, when we're in between races, just rest. Rest is super important, both physical and mental. Just try not to stress yourself out in between races. so that you go into each one with a sort of a fresh mind. What do I do after a pit stop? Sit down, unwind, relax my mind, and just get ready for the next one. Even when you're towards the end of a race, you never know if there's going to be a safety car or something that calls for another pit stop. So really, you just get back into focus. Obviously, when you go out for a pit stop, you get this huge rush of adrenaline. So more than anything, it's about getting back in the garage, calming down, containing that, and just getting ready for the next one. How much time do you get off in a season? Do you have to work every race, and do you actually see much of the countries you visit? Well, in terms of how much of the countries we get to see, sort of depends on the race calendar itself. So when you're on a double header, the second event, you'll usually get a day off at that event, so you'll get some time to go and see the place that you are. In terms of time off in a season, we're quite lucky. Obviously, all of my annual holiday I end up using in December. So I tend to get most of December off, and then in between races, we're quite good. We'll tend to only do one day in the factory in between events. So I'll go in to do a day of pit stop practice or a day to build the car, and that's about it. So when we're not at races, we're quite lucky in that we get plenty of time to rest. But you need that rest. How long does it take a person to master the pit stop? Is there a secret to making sure it goes as quickly as possible? In most of this industry, I've always considered that every day is a school day. We talk about 10,000 hours when you talk about how long it takes to become an expert in your field. We often talk about 10,000 practical hours, but I think when you're doing pit stops and it's such fine motor skill, you go way past that anyway in the amount of practice you do. But I still consider myself learning. There's always a way to be a little bit quicker. There's always a way to push the limit, and that's the nature of the sport. I would say that it took me probably a good 3 or 4 years till I was completely comfortable stepping out in the pit lane and doing an F1 pit stop. Do I feel like Gido from Cars? I will let you in on a little secret. I have never watched Cars. I think people are going to be really mad about that. I've never watched it. I love Disney movies, but as it's not one of my daughter's favourites, we've never really sat and watched it together. Sorry.